Thank you very much. My name is Ibrahim Sharqi. I'm from the Brookings Doha Center in Qatar. I would like first to thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Bulgaria and His Excellency the Minister for providing this platform, the Sofia platform, for a dialogue between the countries in the Middle East and to discuss their future and how they can learn also from the experience of the countries that they have gone through the transition, and in particular Bulgaria. Today we're going to discuss two main topics, a future perspective, how are we going, where do we go from here, and how applicable the Bulgarian experience to the Arab region and what we can learn from the Bulgarian experience. And in my view, talking about Bulgaria and the Middle East, there are many similarities. We have the same baklava, same coffee, right? And many other things. So baklava and the Bulgaria and the Arab region share the same baklava, so that's a good start. Now, on a more serious note, Bulgaria and the Arab region share the same geography. Bulgaria has a historical good relationship with the Arab region. There is no colonial history. So Bulgaria is perceived positively in the Arab region. So this positions Bulgaria well to provide the platform for this dialogue and for sharing of experiences. Though the Arab region does not have the communist regimes that the Eastern Europe had, but there were some experiences in the Arab region, in particular in southern Yemen, in Syria, and in Libya, that they wanted to provide or to establish their form of socialist regime. So there are also some similarities, though not to the communist level that the Eastern Europe had. Equally important in my view, why this makes the Bulgarian experience relevant and important, is that it's a recent experience. So Bulgaria has gone through the experience. So we're not really talking about an experience that goes back to the beginning of the 20th century. So we're talking about lessons that have been learned recently over the past 20 years. And if I understand it correctly from the discussions that we had yesterday, is that even Bulgaria was, it took Bulgaria some time to start the transition, so it might probably, there are some lessons of transition today. So this makes the Bulgarian experience relevant, important, and makes the platform an appropriate, suitable, effective platform for a future dialogue between Bulgaria and the Arab region, and also within the Arab countries to learn from the experience. There have been many themes related to transition that I would like to highlight. Mainly is that there is no ideal transition. Transitions are messy, they're difficult, they're challenging, and it is also said that the best day after a dictatorship is actually the first day. And that's after that when the real work or the challenges, the enormous challenges begin. So Libya has had its best day after Gaddafi, then now the real work starts. So this is important to keep in mind, that there is no easy transition, there is no ideal transition. It's challenging, and that's also another reason why it's important that we're having these conversations. Secondly, there are everything is important. We have been talking about dealing with the past, talking about civil society organizations, and the enormous challenges that these countries went through over the past decades. Unemployment is still there, creating infrastructure and civil society organizations and others, and gender equality. So the biggest challenge in my view here is, where do we start? These are all important. So unemployment, when a country, when it has 36% of unemployment, it's as equally important as creating an effective civil society organizations that we were talking about in the previous session. So where do we start? Right? Among these competing priorities in the region, that's a big challenge. We want to start with the infrastructure, civil society, gender equality. This is a big challenge for all of you, going back to the region, is to think about where do we start, given that these are all important, and whether to take simultaneous approach simultaneously among all these areas, or do we want to start with one area in particular. Another theme that we all struggle with, and we always would like to see that to find an ideal solution to it, which is the peace and justice. And I have two experiences here, that probably in the case, the argument in Yemen, where we have so far, we don't know yet where this is going, is that we've given up on justice for peace. And in Libya, where we went through a bloody revolution, so we can have both. So we're still struggling with this concept. Today, I have great speakers panel to try to help us understand two things. Where do we go from here? Future perspective about transition, and also the other thing is how can we benefit from the experience of Bulgaria and East Europe in this. With me, Mr. Abdel Jawad Ahmed. He's a lawyer and the president of the Arab Council for Human Rights, and also played an effective role in the January 25th revolution, and he's now defending the victims of the families that they suffered under the regime, and those who were killed during the revolution. I have with me Mohammed Salim from Tunisia. He is founding member and president of BIRSA. And we have Sarah from Yemen, Sarah Ahmed, youth coalition in the Change Square, in the Tagheer Square. And we have Mohammed Idrah, a lawyer and a human rights activist from Libya. And I would like to remind our great speakers that I'm known of my dictatorship style when I moderate, so I would like to, for you to stick to this reputation, and please stick to 7 minutes in your presentation, and I will stop you after the 7 minutes. We'll start with Mr. Mohammed, and the floor is yours.
سوف أتحدث بالعربية. أنا أود أن أشكر الرئاسة، ولكن طالما أعلن الانقلاب الجزئي.
I would like to announce a revolt against the dictatorship of the panel moderator. I would like to challenge something which was said at the end of the previous panel, that in Libya there isn't a civil society. On the contrary, in Libya the revolution was realized with the help of the lawyers in Tripoli and Benghazi. You can't say that they were patronizing the revolution, but they sparked the revolution in Libya. Now I want to proceed with the next question related to the experience in this country. What I heard yesterday makes me state categorically that we have very similar historical experience despite the differences. There are big similarities in the politics, the political life of both countries. We don't want to delay things for 20 years, as they did here in Bulgaria. And thirdly, I had the impression from the previous panel today, and I somehow thought about today's session that it will be about our hopes, and I've written something which is not a scientific research, a scientific document. It's mostly about my dreams, about the things I want Libya to be. Libya is not what we are used to, what it used to be. There are big practical differences. So now we can start dreaming. We can dream, but if the dream is not based on reality, it will be turned into something very abstract, into an abstract dream, into night dreaming. We can't achieve actual changes and transformation if the parameters of this transformation are not set at the beginning. And the dream might turn into nightmare. So here in our dreams, we clash with reality. There are a lot of things that we want to change, with which we must cope. Libyans should really forget their past and only remember the lessons from it. Injustice will not lay a good foundation, because shedding blood brings more blood, and we shouldn't repeat the mistakes of the past. We shouldn't deprive the revolution from its purity and its justice. The goals of the Libyan revolution are to have, the goal is to have a state which is a civic democratic state based on the rule of law, with a beautiful future for a good-natured nation which would like to live in peace with all nations of the world, the nations that supported it during the trials it went through in the past few months. Libyans must thank all the peoples who helped them, but on the other hand, we mustn't accept those who want to interfere into our home affairs. I want to be completely clear here. We will reject this, and we are ready to be up in arms to oppose such attempts, as we have done in our history before. Libyans need to be abreast with history, and they must we must develop our own constitution. We must have transparent and just elections, which would allow even all the classes of our society to be able to take part in these elections, so that our children could have a better life than the one we had. Revolution is not a trophy which will be shared amongst revolutionaries. Revolution means tearing away from the past, from the culture of the past, from all the negatives of this culture. A state which was built on renting the country, and to go from a cult to one person, a cult which transcends the borders of the country and attempts to spread on a much bigger scale, much bigger scope. If you allow me, let me express my pride in front of you. I love this country almost mystically. I could dissolve myself in this love. Every person who has started climbing the mountain of history will accept nothing less than getting to the top of this mountain. I know I'm maybe a little more emotional than I should be, but I decided to write my summary, my presentation, in exactly this way after the 2 days of scientific discussions and findings. So despite all the reservations that we have about one or other aspect, I have learned my lessons from this forum, and thank you for listening to me.
For your presentation. I learned that you, Mr. Mohammed, focuses on change has happened already in Libya. The building has to be realistic, and we need to focus on the future. Thank you. Mr. Abdul Jawad, floor is yours.
أنا بحيي المنظمين لهذا الحدث. إحنا بعد يعني كان لي شرف في المشاركة في التغيير في الثورة في ميدان.
I would like to congratulate the organizers of this forum because I was part of all events. I was on Tahrir Square from the very beginning, and I've been part of the whole process, the whole uprising. And now hearing the experience of all these countries who have already traveled that road has been extremely important. Many of the problems are quite similar, although each country has its own ideological heritage. But we know that in Egypt, numerous revolutions had happened, but this last one, the most recent one, this was the People's Revolution. And during these last months, we went through important challenges as changing the constitution, launching parliamentary elections, the way we have to address the past, something that we have not considered before. And that was important. It was important to hear the experience of other countries. Me, well, I'm an optimist about the future. Countries that have been on the road of transition for 15 or 20 years encourage us that it will probably be easier for us to overcome the challenges of the transition, and hopefully this will be a shorter and peaceful road. Once the people express their will for democratic and peaceful change, well, of course, I'm talking about the experience in Egypt. What is the way ahead? Well, I think that all forces and groups that participated in the process, the state, the people, the political parties, the media, the institutions, well, we have to start working for change by starting the reform with ourselves. We must think about our attitude to the past, but also about the future. the martyrs of the revolution, those who died, those who sacrificed themselves, they asked from us to follow specific philosophy, the specific philosophy of this revolution. And the revolution needs everyone from the civil society, the media, each and every person. And now we have to get rid of everything that was negative and change our own selves. I think that these people's committees in all countries where revolutions are ongoing provide the people with the opportunity in unsecure conditions to organize things for themselves. The idea of such people's committees for people protection assured the security on roads, on streets, on public and private institutions. It is important for these people's committees to continue changing, improving their actions. We must offer a helping hand to the people, to the state, when the new institutions are going to be built. We should forget about our individualistic actions, because the state now needs the civil society in order to build the new democratic institutions, and we should put united efforts in the development of the new constitution. Prior to the revolution, there was an abyss between the political parties, the society, and the people in Egypt, and that was felt by everyone. If we want to reconsider the past, we will come up with these lessons about what should not be repeated in the future, how to organize our relations with the people, because very often there we have different layers, people in need, and our population, our people very often have very low level of culture, and there is a big difference in the way intelligence, the representatives of the intelligence think, and how the people think, and we need to help people start thinking about the future. And this is the big challenge in front of the civil society organizations in Egypt. If we embark on a political and economic reform in the country without having completed the social reform, then all efforts will be futile. They will be useless. So I think that it is important to learn about the other countries' experience and thus generating new ideas, both about what we went through and what we need to do in the future, adapting it to the conditions in our country. I try to think about the future in a completely different way. Creation of new public institutions means a lot of effort, because this is a big challenge. We need to get rid of the supporters of the previous regime, and at the same time attract representatives of the general public. Now we are observing political struggles and contradictions, and now we need to tell them that if parties only fight about the power, about getting into power, who will help the people, who will help the civil society organizations? We have to develop a completely new constitution that will not allow another dictator to come to power in Egypt.
Of how to deal with the future. There needs to be reforms within the society as well, and building civil society organizations that will help dealing with the future. And another thing, important thing that he pointed out in his presentation about bridging the gap between the intellectuals and the society in order to deal with the future. And also on learning from the Bulgarian experience, mainly is the length of transition, that it's learned about how long this experience took, and also how to deal with the past. So these are important themes that will help from the Bulgarian experience as well. Thank you, Mr. Abdel Jawad, again, and with revolutionary voices from the Change Square in Yemen, with Sarah, the floor is yours.
I need to borrow your watch.
Sorry. Yes. Okay.
I'm not very good with time, so. It won't sit for me. Okay. Feminism. Yesterday, I made a new friend who was asked by another new friend I made about the definition of feminism, and I fell in love with her answer. She said, feminism to me is simply being a human, wanting to be treated as a human. But when you come to reality, when you are a feminist and you practice feminism, you are more of an iron-jawed angel. Iron-Jawed Angels is an American movie that told the story of American feminists who fought really hard over the years to get the basic rights for women to vote, to get the rights to be elected and all. And this is who we've become, Iron-Jawed Angels. Arab feminists are caught in the middle between two dilemmas. An Arab feminist has to work under the umbrella of human rights. She has to work for the national cause. She has to fight for human, the Arab human, the Yemeni human, the Egyptian human, the Libyan human, and so on. However, at the same time, she needs to keep her goals as a feminist ahead. And here is the dilemma and the great challenge. There is the context of a national struggle. Take Yemen as an example. We don't have the actual concept of the theory of feminism in Yemeni feminist NGOs. The only one that is working purely for women is one NGO called the Sisters Arab Forum for Human Rights. And it's led by an amazing woman. Her name is Amal al-Basha, who's trying really hard to, work here and there, work for both men and women, and also focus on women, which is very distracting and very exhausting. And in the past 5 years, the right wing, especially the Muslim Brotherhood, recruited thousands of women to come up with this new form of a religious feminist, a woman who's covered head to toe, who would go vote just for her party, would never go on a protest unless the head of the party asked her to go protest. And we all saw that 2 years ago when we were trying so hard to fight for a law that bans minors' marriage. And when we were this close to do it, the parliament members from the Muslim Brotherhood voted against the bill, and it was rejected by the parliament. The next day, we went protesting, asking them to stop raping women in the name of young girls in the name of marriage. And 2 hours later, the Muslim Brotherhood recruited thousands of women, all in black, covered head to toe, going and holding Quran and saying that they are against banning minors' marriage. So how do the totalitarian Arab regimes use this? They play with them like chess pieces. Let's use feminists against Islamists when they overdo it, and let's use Islamists against feminists when they overdo it. And they succeeded. And we ended having very schizophrenic feminists in the Arab world, unfortunately. So, the revolutions. And I would like to quote from Julie Merritt's book, Women Waging Peace. Feminist advocacy to include women in transitional justice advanced on 3 primary grounds. Firstly, to secure the recognition of women's experiences of gender-based violence and armed conflict. Secondly, to bridge the gap between legal standards and their enforcement. Thirdly, to secure reforms in courtroom procedures in order to ensure that victims of sexual violence were not re-victimized by adversarial legal process. And then we were very happy to see that the UN Security Council adapted the resolution 1325 on women, peace and security, and they demanded the increase of women's participation in all stages of peace processes. But the very particular situation that Arab women in general and Arab feminists go under only in the East was not mentioned in any of those meetings or conferences or legislations. The violence that a feminist or a female activist goes under at times of revolutions is not necessarily rape. But everybody talks about rape only, and I know because it's the most outrageous crime that can be committed against a human being. But we all forgot about other violations. The fact that a woman has to be labeled as not decent, not conservative, not religious enough if she speaks out. The fact that we still live in a male-dominant society that labels women, and by the way, when I say male-dominating society, I'm not just talking about right-wing or fundamentalists or Islamists or, no. We're talking about all sorts of movements where males kind of feel intimidated by women coming in partnership with them. And then they start using the traditions and then religion and then God to keep them away from the scene. And this happened in Yemen, and I was part of a very painful experience. When women in Change Square in Sana'a started taking the lead of everything, they were in the tents with the tribesmen. They broke all the stereotypes, and they gained the respect of the tribesmen that everybody said that they hated women's participation, which turned out to be wrong. Here is what happened. The soldiers that came to protect the revolution, the soldiers that joined the revolution to protect the protesters, attacked women because women were protesting along with men. They said, if you want to protest, it has to be a female protest. Otherwise, you just can't protest together. And when we asked why, they said, because bad things can happen. And then the answer was, it's not a bedroom, it's a street. And if I don't establish my partnership with you now, I will never find a place in the new state. The result was that we were shot, we were beaten, and there was an outrageous campaign, not by the regime, but by the opposition, the right-wing opposition. And unfortunately, some of the progressive men attacked us as well. That's a violation that I need to know if we will ever get justice for later. And then it made me pose a question, especially with what's happening in Tunisia now. Tunisia, in my opinion, is the thermometer of the women's rights and feminism in the Arab world because it's the most developed Arab country in that field. If Tunisian women go one step behind, it means we're all doomed. And I started, I'm terrified by that. And then it poses a question. Why is it that every time there is a change point in the Arab history, a revolution, a war, or whatever, And then there are women who fought really hard. Arab feminism is old. I mean, we remember Huda Sha'rawi in Egypt, and this is like decades ago. Why is it that every time women accomplish something, a new state comes and demolishes all the accomplishments, and then they have to start all over again from scratch? I think this is the way ahead. This is the question you asked, what should we do in the future? I think there should be some serious documentation for women's hard work, day by day, because we don't have a place in history. History is full, I mean, look at children's books in schools, history books. We don't have a woman's picture. When I studied history, the only woman's picture I saw was Jamila Bouhirid in the Algerian Revolution, and that's it. The second thing, we should demand to have a guarantee in the constitutions, because if we want more rights, we can't start from scratch. At least preserve the existing rights before you start demanding more rights. For the future, there is the radical change solution, which is, demanding a guarantee in the constitution, and at the same time documentation. And Dr. Fatma al-Marnisi was supposed to be with us, as I saw in the schedule, but unfortunately she wasn't here. She wrote a great book about forgotten queens in history, and that's one way to do it. For gradual social change, we need to work on awareness, and we need to include men, which is unfortunately something that Arab feminists have forgotten about, and this is how we became enemies instead of becoming partners. And finally, I have to say this in Arabic. I think we all have this tradition now because we miss the dead, our dead people. And it's okay, we can miss them, but as the great poet Mahmoud Darwish said, وَحُبُوبُ سُنْبُلَةٍ تَمُوتْ تَمْلَأُ الْوَادِ سَنَابِلًا. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. It's great.
You watch.
I'm sorry we didn't hear the text in Arabic. I'm sorry.
Listing your recommendations for the future of how to go ahead and for return. Thank you. We'll go with Mr. Muhammad. The floor is yours.
Okay. I'm going to do it in French. Je vais parler du futur de la Tunisie puisque je suis tunisien. Je vais essayer de respecter le temps imparti. Quand vous rencontrez des gens en Tunisie,
Аз съм тунизиец и искам да говоря за... Sorry, I'm Tunisian and I want to talk about Tunisia. So I want to talk a little bit about the way I'm being asked, what I think, how things will happen in Tunisia. What I'm saying is we mustn't think in this way. Political will is very important. Since 2007, the philosophy of my political movement is not fatality, not concentrating on the past, but moving forward. So I want to talk about the pledges that we want to take. In the first place, we want to reform our society. We want to reform our society because it's not relating only to Ben Ali or Bourguiba. When I look at the history of Tunisia, always a shepherd decided, the so-called shepherd decided the fate of Tunisians, whether he was local or a colonizer. And actually, the Tunisian people must be the ones who take the decisions for their future. This is the crucial pledge, the most important pledge, the social covenant by which we will rediscover and reassess our future, our present. There are two projects at the moment for the way our society could go. It makes things very difficult. Democracy has its limitations. Democracy could turn into a source of confrontation when we discuss a democracy of parties. So nowadays we are facing two completely different projects. We have to find the common points of the common grounds of these projects, which will allow us to unite the Tunisian people and build our future. So far, maybe we didn't have a society even. We need a strong society. I don't mean civic society. Civic society is a term which I got familiar with when I started communicating with international organization. It's a good word when one needs funding. I don't think this is a good term because we create something of a conflict between society and civic society. I don't want to have such a confrontation. Politicians are not necessarily bad people, and civic society is not built by angels and decent and honest people only. When a certain political party comes in power, there are the tools, the instruments of public authority by which a society could be destroyed. We need strong citizens, not only organizations of civil society, but strong citizens as a whole. All citizens must be strong. We don't want to create new divergences, new differences by creating gaps and borderlines between organizations of civil society and the other citizens, because this will mean creating new parties and opposition between the parties. What is the meaning of society? If we have a strong society and a strong state and a weak society, we go into a state of dictatorship. We need to have a strong society. I know we need strong public services, but we need a strong society too. I know that the European Union has programs to assist Tunisian society, but if the programs, international programs, are only aimed at strengthening the society, it might affect the public authority and the way the country is ruled. So every society must be strong. We need a strong Republican society. The Tunisian experience is the experience of Bourguiba, which could be assessed both as a success and as a failure. Bourguiba achieved a literate society, an elite. I don't like this word very much, but there was an avant-garde. What was Bourguiba's failure, which is maybe also the fault of Ben Ali? They formed an intelligent elite, but this elite betrayed the people of Tunisia. There was a very contradictory speech about rights of people, and the approach to the rights of people was not good. We have to achieve an ideal balance, intelligent, competent, and brave citizens. If we think that we're the most intelligent in the world, then we are in a danger of becoming a dictatorship again. So here comes the role of the schools and the education system. Education is a political pledge, and I believe that in Tunisia we could pay attention to we must pay attention to education. We must focus on education, on the contents of the education programs. You can educate Republican citizens, but you can also educate other citizens whose philosophy is not compatible with Republican values. For example, Gutenberg created his revolution. The revolution of Copernicus is a different revolution. The transition from monarchy into republic is also a revolution. So in Tunisia, we have to tear away, to break all links with the past mentality, and we must perceive the state as something which works in the context of crisis. It must be representative. What is happening at the moment in Spain and in the US, we can see that there are democracies who are on their way down because they rely too much on the state only, and the citizens and their rights are neglected. I think that we need a different model, a participation model in which all the citizens will take part in the governance of the state. So in Tunisia, we must try and avoid the mistakes that were made in Europe. And we must choose a model which I, as a lawyer and an activist, call doctrine of emancipation. We mustn't borrow policies from the West or from the East. We must build our future in our own way.
I'd like to use the remaining time for your questions. For your questions, please go straight to your question, and if you have a small remark to make, please don't exceed 2 minutes. We'll start from here.
Just to be practical and specific, I have 2 recommendations for this conference. The first recommendation is that, remember, before the revolution, we had been, I think in Egypt, we have been doing an encyclopedia of torturers, people who were, targeting the Egyptian citizens and are immune from being tried. This encyclopedia of tortures should continue during the transition so that it would put a pressure on the justice system and on the security system not to continue such practices. So this is very important that in Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, I think Libya is over now, the issue, but maybe Yemen, maybe Syria, they can put some of the list of the people and put online internationally, because this is a policy of name and shame. Remember, Arab culture is a shame culture. And so you can shame those people so that nobody would continue such practices. The second proposal I suggest is that we need a summary of the experiences of all those countries in Arabic, short pamphlet. What did you do with the civil society? What did you do with media, security, all that, and it should be printed and sent to all Arab Spring countries. Media can publish it so that you inform public opinion what they are going through and what are the different passes that happen. Because I don't want it to be limited only to a group of elite and policymakers and academics like us. But what about the public opinion? If we want to involve public opinion, we need to get them something like that. So a 10-page summary of all the aspects of transition that happen in Bulgaria, Romania, other countries. That would be very informative.
Thank you for this practical recommendation. I would like to take the next question from here, and we'll move here. Yes.
أنا اسمي محمد خلف صحفي.
Mohammed Khalef, journalist and researcher from Iraq. For 2 days, we've been talking about experience. The Iraqi experience wasn't mentioned here. The things which happened 9 years ago, because the first decision taken by the American government was to dissolve the police and the army. Then there was some decrees that followed for dissolving the Baas party and for it to disappear from society. So 2 or 3 million Iraqi citizens became unemployed. They were literally thrown out in the street without the opportunity to defend themselves in the Iraqi courts. Therefore, in Iraq, a process was started of transforming the new Iraqi state on a completely foreign foundation to the Iraqi people. This huge number of people went through these changes, and this brought a lot of problems to our society, because not just these 3 million people had this disaster in their life, but everybody was affected. I personally was a defender of the foreign military intervention, but I didn't expect that it will bring such a catastrophe in Iraqi society, to Iraqi society. I know a new law is being prepared, which will lead to the establishment of the practices. So, just briefly, I'm asking the other Arab countries not to repeat our mistakes.
شكرا. سعدت كثيرا الحقيقة بالمداخلة المناظرة.
Thank you very much. I was very happy to listen to the young Yemeni activist and fighter. It was extremely interesting to hear her experience about the participation of Yemeni women in the revolution. As a Tunisian activist from the movement for renewal, I would like to congratulate this great Yemeni revolution, which has been ongoing for months. The people are out there in the streets, and the world is only watching, nobody taking any measures. Wouldn't it be great if the Western countries support the Yemeni revolution as well? But they are not doing it, and I think that this is a huge stain on the face of the Western democracy. The Yemeni youth, the Yemeni nation is now fighting for its own future, and I was really happy our Yemeni friend shared her experience. As for the participation of Tunisian women, well, they are also in a very difficult situation resulting from the political changes, because political progress is not always equal for all groups of the society. A big achievement of the Tunisian society is threatened to be lost, that is, to have certain rights of the Tunisian women cancelled. So, Arab Spring should pay special attention to the women, to the fact that women, as members of the society, should be correctly appreciated by the revolution, because it was the women and the young people who were oppressed most by the authoritarian regimes. And if no attention was paid to this in Tunisia or in the other Arab countries, then the revolution would go back, and it won't be a sustainable revolution.
Kader Ould Mohamed, je suis de Mauritanie. Permettez-moi une seconde pour remercier bien sûr.
My name, I come from Mauritania, and I would first like to thank the Bulgarian Foreign Ministry for the invitation extended to me. I will talk in French because I don't know how feminism will be translated in Arabic. I'm a lawyer and a researcher. And please excuse me when I said this, but I said it because there cannot be any development if women are excluded for this development. So I'm bowing to the fight of the women in the Arab societies. I want to remind you that there are some patriarchal societies in the Arab world, and although we are a Muslim country, there is equality. There is a gender equality. Many things were done, and women in my country, in Mauritania, have a very dignified position. And this is part of our tradition, our national tradition. I know that this, of course, is a topic for a long discussion, but I only want to underline that women, even in the Muslim societies, can achieve huge development. And once again, I want to congratulate the Tunisian activist. I support her fully, and I think you explained very clearly the way the civil society should follow. Whether this will be issues that will be examined only by the media or will go down to the grassroots, to the people, well, that's a question of the future. Thank you very much. This is my first visit to Bulgaria, and I heard many interesting things. But in general, with respect to the access of women to justice, well, women have not been entitled to it, but democratization means always reinstating justice.
أنا سفيرة مصر في بلغاريا. أولاً أود أن أهنئ.
I'm the ambassador of Egypt to Bulgaria. I would like to comment on what you mentioned, remaining the female wing of the Muslim Brotherhood in North Africa, the so-called Muslim Sisterhood. Their activity, in your opinion, is related mainly to serving the ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood. I want to underline, however, that the female movement does not contradict the Islam faith. At the same time, Islam never differentiates between the woman and the man. So the Islam movement is also fighting for the respective rights and dignity of women.
Two comments from there, and then we'll give the time to speakers. Yes.
محمد سلامات من المعارضة السورية في بلغاريا.
كنت أتمنى أن الثورة السورية في المجيدة قد انتهت ليكون لنا ممثل على
From the Syrian opposition, I wanted so much to say that the Syrian revolution is already over, and I would, so that I could speak from the point of view of a victorious revolution. But I do hope that the victory will be coming soon. The Arab people, with their glorious revolutions, started climbing very fast the mountain of revolution, and we will never stop until we reach the top, the peak. The future of the Arab revolutions, I think, compared to the legacy of the former communist countries in Europe, will be very different. Because just as you had several opportunities for the communists to come back to power, in our case, this will be impossible. Once democracy wins over, there will not be any opportunity to go back. We do not expect this. The people who will come to power, who will govern the country, would not be connected in any way with the former despotic regimes.
Well, thank you very much. I am taking the floor in a way to it's a belated gratitude I have to extend to all those that were on Tahrir Square, because they obtained the resignation of Mubarak on my birthday. It's in 11th February, and this is the best birthday present I've ever got in my life, I have to say. Secondly, I'm a Bulgarian diplomat. I was the first, by the way, foreign affairs advisor of President Zhelev. And we were talking during the pause with him about the beginning of the 90s, where in Western Europe and the United States, our friends organized conferences like this to help the emerging democracies from this part of the world. And it's how wonderful it's that now in Bulgaria we can do that for friends elsewhere that fighting for freedom. Second thing, it's going to be difficult. You may have realized from what you have heard from Bulgarian participants. One of my greatest friends and maître pensée, Adam Michnik, the Polish journalist and politician, said at the beginning of our transitions in post-communist Europe, well, it's not impossible, but difficult but not impossible to make fish soup out of an aquarium. It's even nearly impossible to make, though, an aquarium out of a fish soup. That's what our transitions are about. We are trying to make an aquarium out of fish soup. And I have to say that in Bulgaria, in spite of all those difficulties, we could make this aquarium. Now, on a more serious note, I have a curiosity. It's not a recommendation. It's obvious then the main clash in societies, in emerging Arab democracies, is between secularism and Islamism. That's what I understand from all the discussions. And from that point of view, of course, the measure of success of the Arab revolutions will be, of course, women's rights. But I have the feeling I am preaching the converted here. Now, what do you think about the role the moderate Islam could play in a secular constitutional framework, the way it plays more or less in a Muslim country like Turkey? Do you think it's a solution? When you look to European history, we realize Christian democracy has always been one of the main driving forces of democracy. The European integration was initiated by Christian Democrats like Adenauer and Schuman. So what do you think about the possibility of developing a moderate Islamic presence in your political life.
Thank you very much. Last comment from the lady.
Добър ден, аз съм правителствена организация.
Good morning. I represent a non-governmental organization. Our members are people who work in such countries as Syria, Libya, Tunisia. For all these people, it is extremely important, and for us as an organization, to know what is happening there and how will this end? How can we be useful? Well, that's our experience from the very beginning. Whatever successes we had, they were mainly due to the fact that we were able to unite different groups of people and different organizations in the name of a common goal that we've been pursuing persistently. When we did not do this, we failed. For that reason, I really liked what the gentleman from Egypt, I think, said, that is about the dream. We need dreams and have as many organizations and as many persons as possible unite around this dream. And also to replace the past with this dream. The second thing I would like to recommend, something that impeded us, was not to fragment this core of organizations that share the same dream. They need to create very clear, very good messages to the people so that all people understand what are the goals and how these goals will be achieved. And also there is a need of public awareness, of information campaigns, because if this information does not reach each and every person, regardless of the number of conferences and recommendations we make, we cannot achieve the goals. And thirdly, be very persistent, be prepared for a long transition. See how we have still not completed it. There is always a threat to make steps back. It was very difficult for us to confiscate, for example, the property of the totalitarian organizations. This was a very important step, but it needed lots of effort and years to achieve it. For example, 2 months ago, our totalitarian party got back a piece of property, and the current government granted them back with this property. So don't give up on what you consider as the most important goal, the most important task. And if you decide that you are already fine, that if you feel complacent, if you decide that you have resolved your personal goals, then you will think that you have done everything, but this will be a mistake.
The questions and the comments. We'll start with Sarah.
First I will start by answering your question. And it's a very important question. Yes, it's sad, but it's not only have feminists become schizophrenic, but the Arab woman became schizophrenic because the male dominance made her become schizophrenic. She's been fighting to gain her rights over the decades. And then now she goes to school, she gets educated, she goes to work, but these are the limits. And men still act in a way that, we did you a favor, we gave you permission to go to school and work. I mean, we both know, since we both come from an Arab society, that neither you nor I own anything, starting from our name, ending with our bodies, going through our life choices, education, where to work, everything is so difficult. You have to fight for everything. At the end of the day, it's just a privilege, not a right. This is for the common woman. As a feminist, Arab feminists have at some point to become schizophrenic because they're trying to fight for human rights, but at the same time they're trying to fight for women. And then at some point they have to compromise. And somebody here spoke about secularism. And here's the idea. There is no existence for a religious feminism. As you said, I completely agree. Feminism does not contradict with any religion. But feminism 100% contradicts with political Islam. There's no way that they would meet. It doesn't contradict with Islam as a faith, but it contradicts with the political Islam, which is practiced by any religious party. And political Islam is just an example. So at some point, a feminist has to choose between giving up her activism and being a feminist, or compromising some of the feminist principles in order to continue. And this is how you see some feminists not able to say their thoughts out loud.
Thank you, sir.
I mean, just a quick answer. Somebody asked about the possibility of an Islamic party ruling in a secular context. You see, we can't exclude people. We can't practice the same dictatorship that we went against. We can't say we don't want. I personally would never ever vote for any religious party, but that's my choice. But I can't prevent others from voting for Islamic parties. But what I can do is this: I can design a constitution that separates faith from the political life, so that they can practice their political values and morals, and I can practice my political values and morals in a way that guarantees my rights. But this is very far away from happening now because they own military and financial assets.
Thank you, Sarah. Dr. Muhammad, do you have any comments?
Yes. شكرا. ربما
Thank you. Here a very important question arose, which I want to pose to my colleagues, particularly the ones who in inverted commas are using the Arab Spring. Is it possible that the activity of the organizations protecting human rights, regardless whether it's a dictatorship or it's in the environment of our revolution, can these organizations adopt their role? In my opinion, they must continue to function no matter whether the revolution is completed or not. Human rights should not be undermined. This organization must continue with their activity, because even in an environment of revolution, people's rights could be violated. I'm talking about Libya, but it refers to any country. In Libya, there are practices which are intolerable and shouldn't be allowed. I know there are things which happened in our part, but we must not allow them. Without going into details, because we don't have enough time now, I would like to ask the question, who creates the dictators and who votes for them? If we want to look forward to the future, we want to assess our past properly. In order to assess our past properly, we have to ask the question, who voted for the dictators and who created them? And my personal reply is, we are the ones who vote for the dictators, who create them, whether we are passive and not vote, because we think that our vote does not count, that it's not important, and it doesn't contribute. So therefore, we create the dictators and have to bear our accountability and responsibility. The fears about violations which could lead to creating new dictators, should not make us passive. If the society focuses only on human rights, which are very important, it is still not enough. We need to observe the election process, to control it, so that it is just and transparent. We need the participation of all powers of society, the legislative, the executive, the judiciary. We want to the people to be educated about democracy. We need to follow up so that even the least educated people must know how they can take part in the elections, as we had with the people's committees in Egypt. Civil society must continue to follow the role of the media, as the Egyptian media system, for example, at the moment is threatened. The civil society must pay enough attention to the media. The problem was that during the revolution, since January this year, there were youngsters who were forcefully taken to the television stations, and they were accused afterwards of breaking into the television station. They were accused falsely. 5 or 6 people went into the television station and wanted to declare something, but they didn't have a common opinion about what they wanted to state. So all of us who are taking part in the revolution could prevent such phenomena from happening. If we take into account the experience in Egypt, Tunisia, in Yemen, and Syria, we can see that there are similarities, but there are also differences which come from the national specifics. In Egypt, we are faced with the accusation that we are organizations funded from abroad. The issue of the transparency of our funding is extremely important. We need to announce our budgets. If I am a state official, the government and the state follow my income and my expenditure, so I could be taken accountable at any moment. The Ministry of Defense has a budget which it announces, so we must have our budgets too.
In French? Okay. Donc, comme je pense que ça va être le mot de la fin, en tout cas pour le panel, le thème de la plateforme.
My conclusion is to do with the topic of the platform. It was dedicated to the justice of transition. We were talking about political justice, but we mustn't forget social justice during transition. In Tunisia, there was so much injustice, such a big disparity between the rich and poorer regions. We can't only talk about political aspects, because you can't do democracy on an empty stomach.
For their great presentations and for working with us, and I would like to thank you for your comments and your helpful comments, and for your patience with us, and for your participation. Finally, I would like, I'm honored to give the floor to His Excellency, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, for his closing remarks, and thanking him on this great event. So, Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Please, you're the panelists, so you're welcome to stay. I'm just going to walk around a little bit. Thank you, everyone, for coming to Sofia once again, and thank the panelists for summarizing actually very well what I think the goal of this discussion was from the very beginning. We wanted to come together to talk about justice in transition. This is the most difficult task of any transition period. In any transition society, issues related to justice is the ones that are most difficult to address. This is what we think in the beginning of transition. But as we move forward in any society, I think Ahmed phrased it very rightly. We cannot have political reforms without social and economic modernization. If political reforms happen alone with no social and economic modernization, they will very quickly be left to the tide of history, and soon we will have returned to what we started before the transition period in one way or another. When the Arab awakening, and I hate using the phrase Arab Spring, because spring comes summer and then comes winter and all kinds of, and then you know, there's another spring. But the Arab awakening, when it started, I always thought to myself that it's a combination of a few things. One is people who were angry at the corrupt regimes. But it was also not just, but it was not just that. It was about people who wanted fair economic opportunity. They didn't want to see just some become rich and others live on $2 a day. But that wasn't just it. It was people who wanted to be part of their government, to have a say in forming their government and in writing their constitution, and in moving their countries forward. But it wasn't even just about that. It was, and this is to me the most important factor which will make the Arab awakening succeed. It was about human dignity, and it was the fact that we lived for many years, at least in parts of the world, in the paradigm in which if you were an Arab, you're a Muslim, and for some reason you're better governed by a dictator. For some reason Arabs were not supposed to be people who can govern themselves. They were supposed to be people who prefer dictators. Who prefer, if you're not under a dictator, then you're a radical Islamist and a terrorist. So these are the only two options. And these are terrible stereotypes. And I go back to the early 90s when, in this country, in a different environment, people were writing many articles saying, well, liberal democracy is possible only if you're a Protestant or a Catholic at best, but not if you're an Orthodox Christian. And Slavs, for some reason, do not want to be governed democratically. And these movements, these very silly topics very quickly perished in history and were proven wrong. And I'm absolutely convinced that all those who today think that the Arab world is on the brink of either some sort of a massive wave of Islamists taking over and terrible things happening will also be proven wrong. And I at least want to help them I want to help prove them wrong. Part of the goal of this conference and part of the goal of the Sofia platform is to help those who want to see their countries develop on democratic roots, who want to see their countries implement justice, implement reforms, modernization, who want to see human rights guaranteed in constitutions, stand a better chance in getting that. And hopefully, by learning from what we did in Central and Eastern Europe and the mistakes we made, that will help. I was fascinated by the discussion on feminism. And I'm convinced that no society in the world can afford to not use 50% of its capacity or more. In any society, half of society are men and half are women. And if we keep half of that society locked away somewhere or not fully integrated into the economy, into culture, into government, into all kinds of spheres, effectively that society cripples itself. And this is, to me, a very strong argument against any cultural or historic or religious paradigms through which we see the environment. Recently, I came across a TV show that showed a very famous Egyptian singer from the 70s, and it was an old black and white movie of a concert of hers. And she was singing in a hall for about, one song was 45 minutes, I think you can imagine who that was. Exactly. And she was singing, and it was a crowd full of people who were looking at her. You know, some were smoking, some were not, men, women sitting together, none of them you know, enjoying life. And it showed a very different picture, I think, from what we often see today. And it showed that actually, in an Arab context, in the Arab world, men and women, despite their religious differences and despite their religious beliefs, and can live and function together. And I hope that this is a picture that we can revive in the future. I want to assure you that we will continue with these conferences. We've already made, well, we were thinking of doing one in March, but we've got so many requests now to do smaller workshops that we'll have to probably identify identify specific topics on which to follow them up. But I would like to also hope that this conference creates a community that debates. Not just by coming into this room, but online, on the internet, on Twitter, on Facebook, by email, in any way that people want, but that it continues this debate and takes it home. Because if we go back to 1990, I think many of us would have felt much easier if we had to turn to somebody in 1990 to see how they had done transition. I know countries are different and contexts are different, but at least helps when you think and when you know that others have been through the dramatic changes that you're experiencing now, and you're trying to find your way through them. We are really on the brink of the most important historical development in modern history since the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Arab Awakening. And I want to finish by perhaps focusing on one topic which I think is crucial, and it was also mentioned by a Tunisian panelist. And this is the fact that, you know, governments will get support, people will train, will go to universities, will learn how to work with institutions. These things will take some time, but they will happen. Civil society will get support, but initially very much so. Then, you know, as life goes on and the ball keeps rolling, less and less, and people will be left to their own merits. So it is very, very important to continue supporting civil society, to continue supporting those that will always disagree with the government, no matter how democratic the government is, because that is the richness of any culture. And if we are able to support those who disagree with us politically, those who disagree with us culturally, but we all agree on the fact that they disagree with us is part of our own success, is very key to transition. And in this one particular group that is vital is political parties. You cannot have a society that is effective, that has checks and balances, that has controls without strong political parties. Political party, you know, somebody will like one political party, somebody will vote for another. New parties will emerge, some will disappear, but they need to be supported, and they need to be supported because they are an integral function of any democracy. Yesterday and the day before yesterday with Professor Kalyoun, we had long discussions about the Syrian opposition. And some often accuse the Syrian opposition of being divided. And he said, I think quite wisely, he said, look, we're all different. We have different views on the future of Syria, but we're all united by the fact that we want a democratic state to emerge after the Assad regime. And this is a very sophisticated approach that he has taken. And I think we should all fully support those who are willing to accommodate the differences between them in order for them to achieve the larger good. So once again, thank you very, very much for coming to Sofia. Thank you, the panelists in this last panel. Allow me on your behalf to begin by thanking some people who worked day and night to make this conference a success. I'll let you know into a secret. We planned it initially for a small workshop of about 50, 60 people. Then it grew quite bigger. I want to thank the European Parliament and its information office in Sofia for supporting us, the Allianz Foundation, the Balkan Political Club, and Dr. Zhelev, who has taken a strong interest in developments in the Arab world. But I want to particularly begin by thanking Luisa Slavkova. Where are you? Luisa, she's the closest we have to the US Marines in the Foreign Ministry. She's our crack team, and she worked day and night to make this conference happen. I want to also thank Christiana, who is next to her, Grozdanova, Daniela, who's here in front. Thank them very, very much for working, and of course to thank Vesela. Where is Vesela? Vesela, thank you very, very much for all your work and for your hospitality. Vesela is a key part of making this process happen, as well as Daniel Stefanov. I don't see him. He's somewhere in the media room, probably working with the journalists and keeping us online. I want to thank particularly also the Department for the Middle East and Africa in the Foreign Ministry, and the people in that department, our ambassadors in the field, our embassies who worked, our protocol office, Ambassador Ivan Dimitrov, for making once again this beautiful setting here. And let me particularly thank the interpreters, and particularly thank those who interpreted into Arabic. Shukran jazilam. Thank you very, very much, because you have managed, and I know it's very difficult to translate not just the words of the Arab language, but the beauty of the expressions into Bulgarian in particular. So thank you very, very much, everyone. And please do join us for lunch, and let us stay in touch, and we will hope to see you again very soon, whether it's here or somewhere else, inshallah. Thank you.